Valerian 9th suffocated under a sky of perpetual twilight, a place where the Terminator line trapped the district in an eternal, bruising dusk. Here, survival wasn't a right, it was a brutal equation. Richard Cole, a dock worker with calloused hands and a soul hardened by loss, knew the math better than anyone. Medical treatment cost 2 weeks' wages, new gloves cost 1. Pain was free. So you let the blood dry and kept moving. It's a grim calculus familiar to anyone who has watched the gears of industry grind down the people who keep them turning. Richard had learned his arithmetic at 7, watching his parents perish in a fire because they chose to save the neighbor's children instead of themselves. He learned that love was the most expensive luxury in the universe, one he couldn't afford, but destiny has a way of scrambling the numbers. One evening, amidst the bones of failed terraforming projects, Richard heard the distinct, jagged sound of desperation. Slavers. 3 small figures backed against a dead-end wall. Children, no older than 7 or 8. The tactical part of Richard's brain ran the numbers, 3 armed adults against 1 exhausted teenager. The solution was 0. Walk away. But then he saw their resignation, the terrified silence of lambs who knew the slaughter was coming. It sparked a bone-deep fury, a rejection of the universe's cruelty. Richard grabbed a length of rebar. The math changed. He fought not with honor, but with savage arithmetic. He aimed for knees and kidneys, trading his own blood for their incapacitated screams. When the dust settled, Richard collapsed, his side opened by a blade. But he was alive, and 3 pairs of alien eyes watched him, violet, green, and golden. T, the violet-skinned girl, pressed her hands to his wound. Athena, dark-haired and green, tore her dress for bandages. Freya, the golden one, sang a melody that seemed to weave through his nervous system, dulling the pain. They dragged him to his hidden shelter, a secret hollow in the industrial skeleton of the city. For days, as fever burned through him, the roles reversed. The rescued became the rescuers. They claimed to be runaways, rich kids playing at poverty. Richard, seeing through the fever haze, noted their bioengineered markers and automatic grammar correction. He taught them the laws of the street: boil the water, sleep in shifts, trust no one. They absorbed it all. But when they returned from a scavenging run with food, they shattered his worldview. "You 3 share?" Richard had rasped. "I can wait." "No," T insisted, her violet eyes fierce. "If one eats, I'll eat." It was a naive philosophy, one that had gotten his parents killed. Yet, looking at their determined faces, Richard broke. He took the bread. For a few weeks, they were a unit, a fragile ecosystem of care in a city of apathy. But winter was coming. Richard knew the updated math. He couldn't keep them alive. To save them, he had to betray them. He tricked them into marching toward the palace district, planning to surrender them to the guards as orphans. But at the gates, chaos erupted. Freya tripped, revealing the glowing, intricate seal on her throat. These weren't just rich kids, they were the lost heirs of the Valerian throne. The dynasty markers flared like beacons. Guards swarmed. Richard was beaten into the pavement, but as he lost consciousness, he heard their screams. Not for help, but for him. "We'll find you, Richard Cole, we promise." They were dragged back to Silk and safety. He was dumped at the spaceport, broken and alone. He fled off-world, burying the memory. Caring meant losing. Lesson learned. 22 years is a long time to run. It turns a boy into a scarred salvage captain, a man who sees traps in every shadow. When Richard boarded a pristine, derelict yacht 2 decades later, he expected a ghost ship. Instead, he found the past waiting in ambush. The airlock sealed, trapping him in red emergency light. 3 figures emerged, no longer children but terrifying avatars of power. T, commanding and violet; Athena, a jade warrior of lethal grace; Freya, whose golden harmonics now vibrated with dangerous allure. "Hello, Richard," T said. "Did you think we'd forget?" They hadn't just remembered, they had hunted him. They revealed the truth of their world. Their brother, Kadrin, had usurped the throne. He was a monster of genetic perfection who held hundreds of noble daughters hostage to ensure compliance. The sisters had the military and the people, but they couldn't strike without triggering a massacre. They needed a wild card, someone disposable, someone they trusted with their lives. Richard tried to refuse, but they showed him a broken cup they'd kept for 20 years. They showed him that loyalty wasn't a childhood whim. "We're tired of being alone in crowded rooms," Freya whispered. "We choose you." The plan was suicide. Kadrin demanded single combat. Richard, an unenhanced human, against a bioengineered demigod. He accepted to free his captured crew and to honor a debt of love he thought he'd defaulted on. The arena was a coliseum of cruelty, broadcast to billions. Kadrin moved like liquid death, slicing Richard apart with performative ease. "Yield," the tyrant sneered, his blade at Richard's throat. "Tell me what my sister saw in you." Richard, bloodied and kneeling, smiled. "I know what things actually cost." He spoke the activation phrase Freya had programmed into the secret devices they'd spent months planting on every enhanced guard and noble in the city. If one eats, all eat. Neural disruptors fired. The elite, the enhanced, the powerful, they all collapsed, paralyzed. But the common people, the unenhanced, the poor, they remained standing. The illusion of power shattered. The few had fallen, the many rose. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Revolution is messy. In the hospital, recovering from 17 wounds, Richard learned the sisters hadn't just used him as a tool. They wanted to build a life, a real one. "The world isn't a fairy tale," Richard warned them. "Then we'll figure it out together," Athena replied, and they did. 4 damaged people choosing to heal in proximity. Governance proved harder than combat. The nobles sabotaged food supplies, the dock workers rioted against integration. Richard became the bridge. He stood before angry mobs of his own people, old scars visible, and spoke the language of desperation. "Your enemy isn't the alien," he told them. "It's anyone who profits from your hunger." He taught the princesses that principles were useless if people starved. They compromised, making reform profitable for the greedy, turning the machinery of oppression into engines of distribution. It was morally gray, but it kept bellies full. Years passed. The integration protocol, their model of cooperative society, became Valerian's greatest export, a product sold to other star systems. They sold hope as a commodity, and it worked. One evening, Richard stood in the Memorial District, which had once been his warehouse shelter. Beside him stood Sa, his eldest daughter, looking at a display of a teenage mannequin sharing bread with 3 children. "The truth is messier than the legend," Richard told her. "I helped them out of rage, not nobility. But you stayed," Sa said. "If one loves, all love." Richard looked out at the city. It wasn't perfect. Resentment still simmered in corners, and politics was an endless war of attrition. But in the streets, human and Valerian children played together, creating new Creole languages. The palace was open. That night on the balcony, Richard joined his 3 wives, T, Athena, and Freya. Time had silvered their hair and deepened the lines on their faces, mapping the history of their shared battles. They spoke of the new statue the council wanted to erect. Not of Richard the hero, but a simple loaf of bread broken into 4 pieces. "Thank you," Richard said, the words heavy with a lifetime of gratitude. "For what?" they asked, the rhythm of their connection unbroken by time. "For proving that the math can change. That some promises remake the universe." In a galaxy often defined by the cold equations of survival, they had proven the only corollary that mattered. If one eats, all eat. If one dreams, all dream. Together forever.